Hey everyone, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I just got back from Joe's Valley. We had 8 days of climbing there, and I am happy to report I had the best climbing day of my entire 20 years of climbing career. And I wanted to make this video to share with you 5 things that I did that I really believe gave me this breakthrough day. Stay till the end because the last one I'm going to share is one we rarely talk about, or I rarely hear anyone talk about. And I think it's probably the biggest reason why I was able to have a day like that. So if you are wanting to climb better, feel stronger, if you want to have a breakthrough day, I'm just going to walk you through exactly, very quickly, what I did that I know made the difference for me. Spoiler alert, I did not do a V7. That was not my best day. V7 I had picked out to give a try at Joe's Valley. Was in the sun all day long. It faces southeast and it just baked and it was so hot when we were down there. So there was no way you could climb in the sun. We had to search out problems that were in the shade or in shady areas. And the problem was in New Joe's, which is so hot anyway. So it was not a V7, but I did a bunch of V6s quite quickly. Well, not a bunch. I did a few V6s quite quickly. I did a bunch of V5s really quickly. So for me, that is my best day, hands down. So the things that I did, first one is I really prepared for this trip. Like it really mattered, but I stayed super flexible. So before the trip, I did a ton of research. I spent time watching videos. I previewed boulders, and I really worked to choose climbs that really made sense for me. So that meant, as y'all probably know if you're watching this, nothing too high, nothing with a sketchy landing. I really wanted safe problems that I knew I was going to be able to give my all on without freaking out or getting scared. I just know where my head is at. It's better than it used to be, but it's not yet in a place where I can do scary high balls. So that planning and that preparing, it was huge because it saved me so much time from wasting time wandering around looking at boulders. Is this one a good fit for me or not? I already had a list of things that I thought would be good for me. So number one, I showed up with a plan. But the really important part of this is that one of the hardest boulders I sent the whole trip wasn't even on my list. So the lesson here is yes, please plan, prepare, but don't get rigid. Preparation gives us direction, but not limits. Number two, I fueled and supported myself like I was a real athlete. So I really focused on my fueling. That meant electrolytes every single day. It meant eating every 2 hours. I made sure that every 2 hours we were out there for long days, usually from 8 in the morning till 5, sometimes a little after in the evening. And I was just making sure I was eating something every 2 hours. These were not full meals. These were little snacks, things like that, things that are light on my stomach. And I know that worked for me, but every 2 hours I was fueling. I increased my calories. I usually take in around, I don't know, anywhere from 1,400 to 1,600 calories a day. But on this trip, I made sure I was taking in 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. And that was by upping protein and carbohydrates. And I increased my protein. I was very, very conscious of this from around 120 grams daily. And I boosted it up to 160 to 180 grams daily. So making sure I had lots more protein coming in. And when I was eating every 2 hours, I made sure there was protein along with whatever I was eating those every 2 hours. I also really stayed consistent with supplements. And so the big one that I did different on this trip was with my creatine. I take 5 grams of creatine every single, no, I take 5 grams of creatine every single night. And on this trip, I added 5 extra grams of creatine into my water with electrolytes. I also have some beetroot powder in there. And so I ended up daily taking 10 grams of creatine. And I really feel this helps so much in my recovery and maybe even some strength gains. I also took my collagen every morning. So I packed all this stuff along. Sometimes I'm just like, forget it. I'm not going to pack all this stuff. But I really did. I just wanted to be optimized. And I know that at my age, at our age, those sort of things really matter if we're looking to perform our best. Our recovery, our cellular energy, it matters so much more than it did when we were in our 20s and 30s. So that was the next thing I did, the fueling. I was really on target with that. All right, number 3, I managed my energy and not just my psyche. So This was a big one in the past. I would show up on a trip like this day one and just go all out, just get on everything, just try as hard as I could on everything. But I changed my tactic this time because that rarely has worked for me in the past. So I thought I'd try something different. So, day one, I really controlled my psyche and really focused on just doing a lot of problems, topping out. That was for my head, for my confidence. You want to top out some easier boulders just to feel like you can get on top of something. That really helps with harder boulder problems. And I just focused on getting used to the rock and movement on that sandstone. And that first day really allowed me then to wake up the body and get the body used to that stuff. And then I knew I could go harder on day two. So that's kind of how I planned it out. And that worked really, really well. And then I also took way more rest days than I normally would on a trip like that. Any of you watching this who know me or know Luke, we are known for we'll climb every single day. And for me, it just does not, it does not work. And so on purpose, I had to make myself take a couple extra rest days than I normally would on an 8-day trip like that. And after I had taken a day and a half off, so I had climbed in the morning, I took the afternoon off, and then I took a full rest day the next day, which by the way was so hard because I was still out there spotting, supporting Luke, and I wanted to hop on those rocks, but I didn't. And then that next day is when I had the best climbing day of my life. So that resting, that recovering at our ages becomes so important to be able to send our best, to be our best, to be strong on these trips. So more rest days. All right, number 4, I built momentum instead of chasing peak climbing experiences. So I did not chase my hardest climbing every single day. This kind of goes back into the resting and recovering, but instead I really thought about trying to build momentum across days. So I would look at doing easier sends. I'd look at doing easier problems that I knew I could tap out just to build confidence and get my head in the right space. I really spent time dialing in movement. A lot of times in the past, I would just rapid fire things, rapid fire, rapid fire. And although Luke did catch me doing that a couple of times, I was really trying to be mindful to not do that. And then just really paying attention to learning the rock and the feel of the rock and how that felt, how I felt within my body while I was climbing the rock. So by the time my best day occurred, I don't think it was random at all. I think it was really built in to what I had planned for this trip. My body was ready, my mind was ready, my confidence was really high. I think that day was just the expression of all those things combining and stacking together. All right. And then the last one, which I believe is the most important one that I took along on this trip to get me the hardest climbing day of my climbing life, is I created a lighthearted but try hard mindset. So I think this was probably the biggest factor. I often would go into trips like this with a lot of pressure, or just into any climbing day or bouldering day with a lot of pressure on myself to have some send, or when it's route climbing, you have to lead this thing when I'm really not feeling like leading. It's all this pressure to do this thing. And I really practiced instead holding this mindset of try hard, but stay lighthearted. So I really did want to climb hard and send things. And also, it was completely okay if I didn't. And that sort of sounds simple, but to hold those two things together, often it feels like tension in there. There's a little cognitive dissonance. And so it's a skill that I practiced and that can be built with this mindset. The two things, I want to try really hard and I want to send. And also it's okay if I don't, or I can stay lighthearted about my climbing. They feel like they're opposed and that there's tension there, but there doesn't have to be. If you practice holding both those things at once, you can reduce that tension and they can both feel okay. So when you practice that, when you practice holding both in your mind at the same time, something changes. You start trying really, really hard, but there's not that pressure there. And so there's not the tightness in the body there. And there's no internal weight going on, which I believe can really, well, for a climber like me, it really, really holds me back. And this is when I'm sure you've heard the term flow. It's kind of sometimes I think it's overhyped, but the idea is if you can hold both those two things at once, I'm going to try my hardest and I'm going to give it my all. And at the same time, I'm going to stay super lighthearted about the outcome. When you hold those two things at once, I do think that's when you get into flow. And that's actually when we climbed our best. So I wasn't backing off by practicing that mindset. I was really lessening pressure around everything. And that allowed me to try my hardest. So for me, I think number 5 was probably the biggest one in regards to getting the best day of climbing I've ever had. So, if you are an aging climber looking to have a breakthrough day in your climbing, take those 5 things and really practice them. Do your planning and preparation. Really plan out your fueling and your recovery. Really think about your energy management, whether you're on a trip or you have 3 days of climbing in a row or you're a weekend warrior. So, you have those 2 days. Think about energy management. Think about building momentum over time so that you can have a we can't have peak experiences all the time, unfortunately. So how can you build momentum over your climbing days to then reach a peak experience? And then finally, the one that I think was most important for me is practicing that mindset of I'm going to try as hard as I can. I definitely want to send hard. And also, there's no pressure to do it. I can stay super lighthearted in my mindset with climbing. After all, it's super fun, it's play, it's a joy when we get to climb. So, being able to hold that lighthearted mindset around climbing while also holding the mindset that I want to try super hard and I want to send. So, practicing that. If you're an aging climber like me and you're trying to keep getting stronger, climb harder, and you're not just about maintaining, I definitely know I am not just about maintaining right now. I want to climb harder. I want to climb stronger. So if that's you, this is exactly the kind of stuff I'm going to keep sharing on this channel. I hope you find it valuable. If you do, would you please subscribe? That really, really helps the channel and helps me be able to keep this going. And maybe like the video, give the thumbs up if you found something valuable. And I'd love for you to leave a comment on what was your best day of climbing ever. Maybe it wasn't a specific grade that you sent. Maybe it was, I'm thinking about things that would make another great day for me. And it would be if I could just lead something that I didn't have that nervous panic attack feeling on. That would be an incredible day for me. So it can be multiple things, doesn't just have to be grades, but leave in the comment what your best climbing day so far has been. Thanks for watching.